Welcome back to the Autoblog podcast. I'm Greg Migliori. We have an awesome show for you this week. Lots of stuff to get to. But with that, I'll bring in senior editor for all things electric, John Snyder. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Pretty good. This is a busy show here. We've both been driving some pretty expensive, pretty nice German hot rods in different shapes. You know, you've been in the Buick Envista. That sounds... A lot of people are really interested in that. So we'll have to talk about that too. And we'll blitz through some news. Lots of SUV news this week. Traverse, Santa Fe, Dodge Stealth. Hey, that might be an SUV. And of course, a couple of electric trucks, including one from Tesla and one from Ford. And we will spend your money. So, pretty big show here. But yeah, I meant to tell you, I actually made the sauce you dropped into Slack about a week ago. The
Marcella Hazan.
Yeah, easy stuff. We were making ravioli for dinner, and I was like, I've got to tell John that. And since we're here and on the podcast, might as well tell, few thousand listeners about it as well. It's the easiest sauce you can make. Stick of butter, can of tomatoes, onion, salt, you're done.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you use butter in it. I've, never put butter in my tomato sauce until I came across this recipe. And then the onion, you just cut it in half, put it in there, and then you just take that out later. And it feels like kind of a waste of the onion, but I read some people say you could take the onion that's been soaking in the tomato sauce and use it to make like bruschetta or,
that's a good idea.
Sort of ratatouille or something with it. And so I think next time I make that I will save that onion and do something delicious with it.
Super easy. If you guys we like to spend everybody's money, but if you need some cooking tips, just Google this one. Super easy. I actually was doing something else. And I was like, oh man, I need to pull together something for dinner. And that took less time than whatever else I was doing, like making my kids lunch or something. It's just 3-4 ingredients and you're done.
Yeah, it's wildly easy and wildly delicious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One other thing, this is a little more car relevant. The Lincoln Lawyer just dropped on Amazon or Netflix. If you guys like cars, it's not a car show at all. It's a legal thriller. But tell you what, there's like a 60s Lincoln in it and a newer Lincoln Navigator. I just wrapped up the first half of it. They split it, 5 episodes in July, 5 in August. That is my casual just tip. If you like cars, you like Lincolns, and you like legal thrillers. It's like a Michael Connelly book. It's like that John Grisham kind of vibe.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's not bad to watch.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I love spotting cars in shows. Just watched the 2010 version of The Karate Kid, and there's a Volkswagen Sirocco in it. And,
nice.
Yeah, belongs to his name's not Mr. Miyagi in this one; it's Mr. Han, I think. But
okay.
Yeah, he's like constantly working on this old Sirocco, and then I won't spoil what happens to it.
Yeah. Tell you what, you want to do some car spotting. The new Top Gun is actually pretty good too. Totally. I meant to bring this up on an earlier podcast. Not really the biggest fan of the world, whatever. Saw the first one like everybody did. And it's on Amazon. It's free now. And vintage Porsche, a lot of cool jets. It's not a bad way. If it's like a summer night, you need to just be inside with the AC on. Another wreck, I would say.
It was a really fun movie too. I liked it.
It was. Yeah, it was good.
I mean, the first Top Gun is like one of my favorite movies of all time. So it's hard to, I was worried that this would, not live up to that at all. It would just be a big disappointment. But no, it was really fun.
I would actually say from a movie standpoint, obviously it's 40 years newer. The movie itself, I thought was better. Just like the production, the overall, like it wasn't as in some ways schmaltzy, and I mean, spoiler alert, somebody key dies in it, like the original one, I guess, but they managed to, it was a little crisper, I thought. So I don't know. Man. So we've really gone off the rails here. I guess I'll jump in and talk about the GLE 53. This is an AMG SUV. Mine came in at $93,500, so not cheap. I wrote a review about it that's probably going to go, I think, next week. So if you're listening to it, come back. If you want to know more about this SUV, it'll be up on the site next week, I think. The big premise that I had here was like that an AMG can kind of be whatever you want it to be at this point. A few years ago, especially 10 years ago, I would have been like, no, this is not an AMG. It doesn't have that 6.3 liter, really 6.2 liter V8. It's an SUV. Like, what are you doing to me? But this it's got the straight six, it's turbo, 429 horsepower, really potent, feels quick. It's got a lot of AMG stuff on it. It's got 22-inch wheels. It's kind of lower than maybe the normal, or it looks lower, let's put it that way. And has the flares compared to the normal GLE, slammed, if you will. This has the night package, the AMG night package, which is really sweet looking. So, I mean, my mind was changed a little bit. I sort of would say if you're looking for a midlife crisis car, don't get the Corvette, don't get the 911. Because for a lot of people in their middle age, they still have a lot of stuff to do. So get the SUV, just upgrade to the AMG.
Yeah. How did it sound?
So there was a turbo-y sound that was not ideal. It sounded good, I think, but I also was very aware I was driving a turbo inline six. Let's put it that way. It has the quad exhaust, if you will, which looks good. Did give it a little bit of almost like a flatulence sound too. So there's that,
Yeah, let's see. I drove the E53 coupe a while back.
Oh, the coupe. Okay.
And I that's one thing I really liked about it was the sound of it. I love the whiny whoosh of a turbo intake, and and the sort of crackling little exhaust you get from it. I don't know, that my whole conclusion that I came from with that was that I really didn't miss the V8.
Okay.
I love a good German i6, turbocharged. It's plenty good for me.
Yeah, interior in this one was really good. It was kind of like it was black, then kind of like a creamy-ish, if you will. They called it macchiato beige. Spilled a little bit of coffee on it, so it didn't show up at all, if you will. It's actually a little slightly dated. I saw some other sites called it like dated, if you will. It's not like the screens everywhere that you see in some Mercedes, but I like that. There was 12.3 inch in front of you, IP, and then the same 12.3 inch like for the infotainment. And then you got a fair amount of knobs and buttons. And I really like that. I was like, this is what I want. It's the best of all worlds.
Yeah, those hyper screens that they're putting in some of them now can be a little overwhelming, visually especially. But I do like their functionality. They work pretty well once you start to get used to it. It takes a little time to get to know it and understand, how it works. But yeah, it's something still kind of refreshing about, just a nice big but not too big screen that's doesn't take up the entire dash.
What I like too, this goes back to my kind of original premise, is like it's an AMG. It felt authentic. It kind of looked the part, but I could do stuff in it. Put the whole family in it. We put stuff in the back. We went to a farmer's market and Eastern Market. Actually got some good pictures. It was actually the Detroit Book Festival, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah, and if I was in, say, the E53, tons of fun, or the coupe like you were in, also fun. It would have been a little less comfortable to do that. So that's kind of my argument, is like, you could have a lot of AMG fun with this, but you're still in a pretty big SUV. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like maybe if you're like, add 10 years to the odometer of life, maybe you just go to a sedan and you're like, I don't need to haul all this stuff. But for me, it's like, I can see why you would opt for this and still want the AMG stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you get the good family hauling sort of package, but you still get to enjoy that fun little engine and the cool AMG touches.
Since Mercedes brought back their straight six, that to me is really enlivened the products that it's in. In the AMGs, you get the turbo. And that's where, like, I don't feel the trade-off. Like, this isn't like, oh, it's like some turbo, way boosted 4-cylinder. It's like, no, this is a legit, engine with some prestige to it and power, So, I'll be excited to drive when Stellantis brings out their Hurricane straight six that I think they're going to use in different vehicles. I believe it's actually out in some of them already, but it's definitely a kind of engine that I think has a very unique character to it, and it shines through in this vehicle. So,
yeah, the Stellantis one, I drove the Wagoneer with the i6, and that one sounded kind of funny. But it might have just been the one I was in. It just was making some weird like hooting sounds and whatnot. But I remember I had a Cherokee, an XJ Cherokee with an i6, and that was my first time, driving an i6, and just the torque you get is pretty surprising, even in a naturally aspirated one. They're fun little engines.
All right, so let's talk about this M4 that you've been in. This is the CSL, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
tell me about it.
Speaking of i6s, this is a twin turbo i6. They upped the boost on it to give it I think 40 more horsepower. So it comes out to, let's see, I think 543 horsepower. Yeah, 543 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque. That's the same as the M4 competition that it's based on. Only comes in rear-wheel drive. So even though it's got a little more power than the M4 competition, it's still a little bit slower, maybe 0.2 slower to 60 miles an hour. But man, this thing's hardcore.
Yeah.
I mean, you open the door and you see these, fixed back, deep bucket carbon fiber seats up front. The rear seats are deleted. The front seats are like bolted in place. If you want to adjust the seating angle, you gotta get out some Allen wrenches. And if you want to adjust the height, they recommend taking it to a shop. But you can slide it forward and backward, no problem. But man, those seats are uncomfortable. When I was getting some photos just near my house, move the car, 90 degrees in one direction, get out, take some photos, turn it so it's facing front, get out, take some photos. By the end of that, I feel like I had bruises on the backs of my legs just from getting in and out of those seats over those really hard carbon fiber bolsters. Not very comfortable to sit in for a long drive, and the suspension is just super crashy. Every little bump, every little piece of rumble strip, in front of a thing, it jolts you really hard, and it's loud. So it's really meant for a track. This is not. I would not want to daily drive this thing. No way in hell. But it is really, really fun. Super fast. A lot of really, really good cornering grip. Really easy to break the tires loose, but you can go in the menu and just totally adjust the amount of traction control, which is great because we had a lot of rain while I had it. So every time I'd even just feather the throttle from a stop, I would get some wheel spin in the back. So I was constantly dialing in the amount of traction control I wanted. But yeah, beautiful car, tons of carbon fiber hood, carbon fiber roof, carbon fiber trunk lid, carbon fiber accents, carbon fiber seats, carbon fiber center console.
Man.
Yeah, no cup holders. You do get a wireless phone charger though.
Yeah, that's a little unexpected. Okay.
Yeah. And then where the rear seats are, there's just, 2 divots under a cargo net, and there's a little sticker that tells you not to put, luggage there, no bags. It's meant for helmets. I suppose you could, put small handbags or a backpack or something back there, just fine. But they don't want you putting a lot of weight back there. And either way, it's tough to get to, whether, no matter what you're putting back there, because the seats don't fold forward. So if you want to put anything back there, you kind of have to reach from between the front seats. And so I don't know. Yeah, not a very practical car, but feels pretty special. I don't know if it feels $140,000 special, especially for something that you're not going to want to drive often. I'd much rather get just the regular M4 competition, and have the all-wheel drive and seats that are more adjustable and a few more creature comforts. I'd rather just get a regular M4. I mean, this was, so much power. It was so easy to overcome the grip from the tires with this thing. I don't need that much power, but it was really fun to drive when the conditions were right and on the right roads. But you really had to go find them. It handles really well. Super, super sharp, responsive steering, very pointy. But yeah, I don't. There are much better ways to spend $140,000. But BMW. If you're a big BMW fan, this is a celebrating the 50th anniversary of the M division, and bringing back the CSL name. And if you're a BMW loyalist, maybe this is going to be your track car.
Yeah. For me, this isn't probably how I would spend the $140. Let me put it that way, because, I would be more like, I want to drive something on like open roads, maybe somewhat near my house, but like open roads and public roads, they're, a little unpredictable. You want good roads, but like this thing's a track demon to the point where like, it sounds like it's borderline undrivable unless you're on a track. And that reminds me of things like the Shelby GT350R, what was it? The Camaro, I think it was the ZL1, or was it the 1LE? I'm mixing up things, where it was like, the Camaro I'm thinking of was so basic that it literally had like one speaker just for there to be the door chime, and you had like the backseat delete option. Like, they're not selling a lot of these, but hey, it's cool they make them. I noticed
this one's limited to 1,000 units, I think.
Yeah. So it's a toy. It's a collector's piece. I don't know. I tend to like a little more balance. Like I'd rather spend six figures and get like just a really good 911 that I could daily drive and enjoy.
Yeah,
going to the post office.
Totally what I would get would be a 911.
What do you think of the grill?
It's fine. I don't mind it. They took out some of the slats and whatnot to give it a little more airflow and to lighten it up. This thing is between removing the seats and putting carbon fiber everywhere, I think it's 240 pounds lighter than the M4 competition. But yeah, I mean, the grill doesn't bother me too much. I'm sort of more on, if you're talking to our staff, I'm more on the side of Zach Palmer than Jeremy Korzeniewski when it comes to the new kidney grills.
I think between you and me and Zach, we could sort of stage our own little resistance here, because I don't mind it either. It's definitely a case by case basis thing. I think there are certain BMWs where you're like, well, that's a lot. I don't know if that's what they should be doing, but I think in this case it totally works.
Yeah, and it's got like nice little accents on it that are repeated elsewhere on the car. They've got those red stripes across the hood, and that hood is really cool though.
Yeah,
looking at that hood, pictures. you see the carbon fiber. They don't paint the entire thing, so you see some carbon fiber through it. They paint the regular paint color on in the shop, and then they stencil on the red outlines for those carbon fiber pieces, and it looks really cool. And
I like when companies do that.
Light. Go ahead.
Oh, I like when companies use the carbon fiber as like design elements like that too. especially with like the paid to the color scheme. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of neat and artistic. But what I was going to say is that hood is just really light. Lifting up the hood, popping the hood is just incredibly light. You can definitely see how much lighter the carbon fiber is than aluminum or whatever.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So there's really no easy transition from like a really sharp edge Bimmer to the Buick, but it's a Buick Envista and it looks pretty good. I know that's kind of where like the conversation started with it. Maybe another thing would be to back up and remind everybody what the Buick Envista is. So, what is this thing?
It's Buick's new entry-level crossover. And it's one of those things that's kind of, what is a crossover? Because this is, it only comes with one powertrain. It's a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder turbo, and it only powers the front wheels. There's no all-wheel drive option. The EPA classifies it as a station wagon. It's actually longer in wheelbase and overall length than a RAV4, which is and then the Encore GX, which is those are compacts. This is considered a subcompact. So it's kind of a weird vehicle, but it's Buick's new entry level crossover. Starts a little below 25,000 with destination. And yeah, it's with the refreshed Encore, they said that was the first, Buick with looks inspired by the Wildcat concept. This is the first one that's the first, to use their words, full expression of the Wildcat, because designed from the ground up. They borrowed from that. It's obviously not, a two-door electric coupe, but you can see, definitely in the pointy nose and sort of the wide shoulders in the back and sort of the sleeker silhouette. You do see a little bit more of the Wildcat in it. But yeah, I think it looks really good. Pretty nice to see it going by. It's really comfortable. It's surprisingly spacious inside. Like I said, that extra wheelbase and length. That'll give you extra, leg room front and rear. Headroom wasn't terrible. It was pretty good up front, and then in the rear, someone like James Riswick, who's like 6'3" or something, might have a little trouble. I'm 6 foot, had no problem sitting in back behind my own driving position. But yeah, pretty simple, straightforward vehicle. There's really not a lot of options. There's just 3 trim levels to choose from. I drove the Sport Touring, which, not quite as nice as the Avenir, but, still some interesting materials, neat textures, without just putting, the regular boring, grainy, hard plastic everywhere. There's not a lot of surface to cover up, so it's pretty easy to jazz up the surfaces you do see with little stitching or some minor accents or just little trim pieces, things like that. So it doesn't feel like a penalty box driving in it, and it's comfortable and it's quiet. You don't really hear the engine, and it handles the crappy roads pretty well. Doesn't transmit a lot of the vibration or sound into the cabin. You can have an easy conversation. It's nothing particularly special to drive. You can get the front wheels loose really easily. There's a good low end torque from the turbo. It'll spin those front wheels, which is kind of fun. But and it doesn't feel particularly slow either. Let's see, I forget what I think it's 137 horsepower and 162 pound-feet of torque, which is ample for this. I didn't feel like I was struggling to catch up with highway speeds to merge onto the highway. There's no CVT, thank goodness. Just a 6-speed automatic, and decent fuel economy, 30 miles per hour combined. So I mean, if you want something that is pretty straightforward and affordable, but not cheap feeling, and not completely dreary to look at, this is not a bad choice.
It's I think it's a really interesting take on this segment where you've got all sorts of different choices in it, if you will, and Buick hasn't really had anything that was super distinctive in a while. So I think it's kind of cool, if you will, that they're getting into it with something credible. This is related to the Chevy Trax, which you might remember in the past that was not a very attractive looking vehicle. I've seen a few of them, and I think they look outstanding for the segment. And I would put the Envista into that sort of segment as well.
Yeah.
You're up against things like the HRV, which has gotten a lot better. You made the comparison with the Corolla Cross too. So I think the Hyundai Kona as well. Like, there's a lot of different things in this segment, and they've all gotten a lot better. Not all of them, but many of them have. Some are still pretty crappy. But at this price point, you could get something that doesn't feel like a penalty box anymore. I didn't realize the exact size of this thing when I just was looking at it. And then I'm like, oh, wow, this is the segment this thing plays in. That's pretty wild, man.
Yeah. It's a subcompact, so it's up against the ones you just mentioned. But like I said, it's going up against a Corolla Cross, but it's got the sort of the interior passenger space of a RAV4. It doesn't quite have the cargo space, but it's a little low on the cargo space. That's what you get with that sort of crossover coupe roofline. But still, it's got the utility of a lift back and better than just a plain old trunk.
Yeah, I think, another thing that stands out to do are like the numbers, 25,000 price range, and then like a 1.2 liter turbocharged engine. That's so small, 1.2 liters.
Yeah.
I remember Ford had that 1 liter that they were putting in like the Fiesta for a while, but, that's a small engine. So, but it sounds, the horsepower, 137, and I think you said 162. I think I've seen that. Yeah. It's respectable for a small crossover.
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely, and it's just, sometimes those 3 liters can sound pretty rough. But like I said, with no CVT and like really good sound deadening, you just really don't hear it all that much, which is nice. And what you do hear is, so filtered through that you don't hear the raspy roughness of the 3-cylinder.
All right. So let's transition over to another GM SUV. This is the new Chevy Traverse. Zach Palmer covered it on Monday of this week. It's got some things that the Traverse doesn't necessarily usually get, like Z71 trim. In Slack, we were kind of talking about how they seem to be kind of Tahoeizing it, if you will, which is interesting because, the original premise of these crossovers was, if you don't want a large body on frame SUV, we can provide you a large 3-row crossover, primarily in the design cues. But hey, if you need to do some light off-roading with your Traverse, it's there for you now. I think it's still a decent value. They did some things like, LED lights, things like that, which are more widely available. Still has, the interior, I think, is a pretty big step forward too. Looking at some of these pictures, it's still a large Chevy crossover.
And I mean, the Traverse is always just bored me to death.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
A lot of it is its looks. And this just looks a little more appetizing, particularly the exterior. Just a little more character. That Z71 looks pretty cool. I love these sort of lightly off-roadified SUVs. I think they're great. The Telluride X Pro is, one of those things where like, it's kind of cool. It's nice to know, it'd be great in the winter with the all-terrain tires. And, I'd be happy taking a Z71 Traverse to a campsite or driving around on some of the, the dirt trails that passes sort of roads up north. Be a fun way to get to the next town over. Just go the scenic route through the where you see all the Polarises driving by and stuff. You could drive around in some sand and through some puddles and it just looks better. It looks a lot better.
The Traverse always had kind of just like this like hulking look to it. At times they've been able to dress up the Acadia to make it look a little bit better. But it seemed like the Traverse, they never were able to really do that. So, I mean, I think this is a big improvement. I don't know if it's necessarily going to grow sales, but it's a big improvement, and, it's 2.5 liter engine, can still tow up to 5,000 pounds. We've both said it's huge. The interior, I think, is an area where the old one was very dated. So this is something that can, again, make it a little more competitive with like things from like Honda, Toyota, Jeep, you name it. It seems like you can't get away with just like, well, it's a mainstream brand. The interior is just whatever. You can't do that anymore. And it looks like Chevy is executing on that with the Traverse.
Yeah. The Traverse interior has always been pretty dreary, unless you get the really higher, fancier trims. But this looks a little more appetizing. I like the dual screen driver display and infotainment screen. Still with a volume knob, and still looks like there's some actual buttons across the bottom. But I think just that little curved, that single screen thing, they have the same thing in the Buick Envista. It can take an otherwise drab interior and make it feel new and fresh, and it gives it a focal point. You're not looking at a sea of plastic. It definitely looks nicer, and I much prefer the looks of the RS and the ZL1, Z70. I'm sorry, what Z71? ZL1.
ZL1. That would be an interesting Traverse.
That would be
track focused.
Yeah. I really like the looks of them compared to like say an Acadia. I like black accents and red accents and off-roady stuff or techie looking stuff much better than chrome.
Yeah.
I'm tired of chrome. I think maybe the world's starting to get a little tired of chrome in their American SUVs and trucks.
All right. Sounds good. Well, let's look over at this Santa Fe. I mean, you want to talk about crazy design? I did not see this coming.
No.
We're going to see the full reveal like later this month, but pictures are out now, and this thing is wild. It looks like a Ford Flex on steroids.
Yeah, if a Flex had a baby with an Ioniq 5 or something.
Yeah, and with a Land Rover kind of mixed in maybe from certain angles. This thing is wild. The taillights are inside. I haven't seen taillights this low on a vehicle. It might just be how it looks in the pictures, but that's almost straight up 70s. The front is crazy. I think it's very cool looking though. I mean, in real life, it's going to be like, what in the world is this thing? Yeah,
the lighting is going to be, I feel like, the thing that either turns people on or off. It's going to be the divisive part of it, just because it's so different. Those little H headlights with sort of the pixels in the light bar. If you could put just normal headlights on it, and it would have looked a lot more normal. But the lighting that's on there really sort of accentuates the squared offness of the front end of it, and just the boxiness of the car in general. Really, really boxy. Which, hey, I like it.
I do too. I do too.
It's different than everything else. It's good to have options. If you don't like it, don't buy it. But I really like the Santa Fe already. So, seeing it a little more spiced up and modern, happy to see it. Be interesting to see what happens with current Santa Fe customers, if they, how many of them move up into this one, or move on to other more pedestrian designs that they're used to, and then how many people are going to come to this specifically because of the looks. How many sort of conquest sales will they get because this is so fresh and different? Be interesting to find out.
It's definitely, I think, a risky play because I like the current Santa Fe, and I think it's a very attractive vehicle. It is. It's pretty well done. So, like, you're taking a risk by going this way. I mean, there's some people that are going to be like, what the hell is that? That's not what I want. And maybe they'll have a run on 23 models or whatever, Yeah. You are going to turn some people off with this thing, but you might get some new people to your brand. So I think it's a big level risk because it's definitely lucrative maybe isn't quite the word, because it's obviously everybody's competitive on price there, but it's a high volume part. This isn't like BMW is going to slap a huge grill on their track sports car. It's like, although BMW took a risk with that grill, which they've used quite prolifically.
Yeah.
But it's not a niche play.
No.
So.
Yeah, it's like right in the middle of of their lineup, sort of, like sort of the larger part of that SUV segment without, going to the 3-row. This is the segment that people are buying in droves right now. And you better hope that, enough people like the design. But I mean, looking at the interior, the space is unique. I really like that sort of tray for the phones, with some buttons right in there, and ports. Lots of it's like very tech focused.
Reminds me of a Polestar almost interior a little bit.
Yeah. Then there's that digital display for the HVAC and whatnot that that a lot of that Hyundai's been going to, and a lot of other companies have been going to, which I don't know. Sometimes that's a little frustrating to deal with if you just want to, press a button. But at least they still have, knobs for temperature control and whatnot. But it looks good, and there's looks like there's lots of little unique storage spaces inside. Yeah,
no, it's I think the interior on this one, sort of like with the Ioniq 5, could really, it could be sort of like the tipping point where, like, maybe you're like, nah, I don't know how I feel about this, but then you get inside and you're like, well, okay, this is, it's usable. It is what it is. So, I guess we'll see. It's, like I said, it's definitely a bit of a risk as far as, what they're trying to do here. It's, it's kind of wild.
It's going to depend on how the newness of it affects pricing too.
Oh, that's a good point.
If they can keep it in line with, what they've been selling Santa Fe at, and still offer the huge amount of content that they offer, it'll make it seem like a value just by what you get in these cars, in terms of comfort and convenience and tech. But if they end up raising the price on it quite a bit, it'll be a little iffy.
The Santa Fe sold 61,142 units so far this year, according to the numbers most recently available. Looking at the sales figures for Hyundai, that puts it at, I believe, looks like Elantra is 74, and then you've got Tucson with 100. So that's its third best selling vehicle. That's an important thing. The Palisade's only about 39, the Kona's 30, call it 38. These are, important vehicles. Santa Fe is up 6% this year too. So
Nice.
It's a risk, but I like it. It's a car business. You can't just always be the same. So
yeah. Well, you can, but
people get bored.
Yeah.
Unless you're the Wrangler or the 911, you really can't get away with it.
Yeah.
But change is coming at Dodge, maybe. The Durango, maybe. The Durango seems like there's some question marks, but the report that we have is that they're talking about replacing it with the Stealth name, which, if you're of a certain age, you might remember that as a sporty coupe based on a Mitsubishi platform, which was, a lot of people liked it. That was kind of a fun little car, high school car in some ways, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I think when I think of the Stealth. So it's a good name, though, in general. I think there's enough people either won't remember that or will like the name or won't care.
Yeah.
So it could be a good name for an SUV. And then the Durango it could sort of move up market and become basically more like like a body on frame thing, which is an interesting move for Dodge. It gives them another product. And that somewhat makes sense, because the Durango being a bit larger and body on frame, it's already a pretty beefy SUV. You could do that if you wanted to do that for Dodge. Like we said with Santa Fe, it could be a good volume play. And then you bring something a little bit different in as a Stealth. So lots of love and hate for bringing back the Stealth name. People think it's blasphemous. I think enough time has passed that it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, not really an icon,
Yeah.
But I don't know. It is kind of weird to put the Stealth name on something huge. Unless this huge thing kind of takes design cues from the stealth aircraft, then
that
maybe,
could work. The stealth bomber. There we go. I didn't think of that one.
But yeah, there's doesn't a big Dodge SUV doesn't really scream sneaky.
Yeah, unless they try to do electric or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but I want to see him bring back Avenger.
I'm okay with Avenger going to the past. It'd probably be good for search because, Avengers, whatever, big movie, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember driving a Dodge Avenger Heat when I worked for Auto Week. And I remember literally a couple people picked up the keys to so what's a Dodge Avenger Heat? And it was like, not much. It's that era was tough for Dodge. I remember driving a Caliber RT that overheated in the basement, basically. It's just like I'm sitting there better turn the engine off. I'm just watching the temperature gauge go up. But that thing was actually pretty fun to drive. So I digress. If you're in the market for a Dodge Stealth, just looking on the Autoblog listings, we have them. Cars for sale. 1990 to 99. You could get one with 96,000 miles for about $7,000. That could be fun. Yeah. That one has the more conventional headlights. If you want to go with the pop-up headlights, you got to go all the way back to 92. And this one is expensive. It's $23,000, but it only has 12,000 on the clock. Oh. So I don't know. I think I'd go with the early 90s one. These have a lot of miles on them. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Fun car. Here's one that
I do like pop-up headlights when they work. When they
work, yeah. So that's a Stealth. Get a little more businessy. Lightning price cuts, pretty significant. One of our top clickers this week, actually, as far as reader interest. Base truck, according to the subheads, $10,000 less. Mm-hmm. My kind of thought on this is they're sort of correcting a little bit now that maybe the supply chain has eased a little bit and demand has kind of maybe leveled off. They're still selling plenty of them. So it seems like it's reasonable to try to find where, go back to where this truck could have been. But I mean, man, I remember it was, whatever it was last year that went all the way up and now it's coming back down. So,
that was quite the price spike. Yeah. it went up a lot. So coming back down, sort of halfway back to, the starting base price of about 40,000. Right now, with this price drop, we're at about 50,000 with destination. Destination on it is almost 2,000. So
yeah. No, it's interesting just to see the price wars. The best thing to do is check out our full story here. Ronan breaks it down. You can just see, the Pro is 10 grand less, all the way up to the Platinum, which is $6,000 less, which actually the Platinum is down to about 94. It was darn near close to six figures.
Yeah.
If not over.
Yeah.
So, you really don't want to have a six-figure F-150 right out the door. I think you want to keep the F-150 under six figures, even in this day and age, if you can.
Ideally, although, you can offer special versions. And
That's true.
I'd like to see some special lightnings, like
well, there you
the
go.
Flash. But
the Flash sounds good.
But yeah, I'm relieved to see some sanity coming back into the pricing here, and hopefully, that's going to force the hand of other automakers too. The Silverado EV starting, the first one they're offering starting at 70,000 is pretty hefty, but that one's got just 450 miles of range, which is kind of nuts. So it'll be interesting to see how these all shake out in terms of pricing versus the competitors, and the range. You can get away with charging more if you have more range, and but yeah, you can only get the Lightning with the extended range battery in the XLT and Lariat. The Platinum automatically, I believe, comes with the extended range, so and you can't even order a Pro right now.
Yeah,
still. So
I tell you what, I drove the Pro last year and loved it. It was just the amount. It's so much value there. Part of it is like you in your head you think, well, it's like a work truck. Great. Infotainment was great. Just so much there. Advanced, infotainment that you wouldn't have gotten even 5 years ago. So I think, I'm really intrigued. I know you drove it, the Silverado work truck, the EV. So it's going to be really interesting, sort of price war and competition there. Ford versus Chevy, of course, but
Yeah. It'll be good. Yeah. And there will be cheaper versions of the Silverado coming out, also with less range. So those will be, seeming a little more sane as well in the future. But it'll be interesting to see if they can eventually drop the price on those. 70,000 seems like a lot, but also 450 miles of range in a truck that you use as a generator as well might make sense to some people.
All right. Well, close out the news section with another electric truck. This is the Cybertruck. They've made one of them. First one came off the line. Mm-hmm. It's reality. They've joined the ranks of Ford, Chevy, and Endurance. The Endurance is, was here. It's already gone. But snarky comments aside, it's a big milestone. There's well over 1.6 million orders. This thing's going to be, I think, like one of the hottest, vehicles of the year for its design. And I read somewhere that people are comparing it to like the Mercedes G-Class. It's going to be that kind of a status symbol initially.
Yeah.
So I like the design too. I really do. I like wedge shaped design aesthetics, child of the 80s, So
Yeah.
hey, it's a thing. It's here.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to picture a world where you see these all over the place.
Rodeo Drive, maybe.
But eventually, based on the amount of pre-orders for this and the Tesla's ability to eventually ramp up production, 4 or 5 years, it's possible that these are going to be all everywhere, but it's just hard to envision it just because it's such a weird looking thing. But it'll be interesting. Eventually it'll feel normal to us.
Eventually.
Which is why, them getting the first pre-production, assuming prototype built is such a big deal. And yeah, we've been waiting for this for a long time. Be interesting to see in detail sort of what changes carried over from the original when we saw it at the launch. There's that we can sort of make out that giant single wiper, but you can't really tell what else is there. There's maybe a steering wheel that's an actual steering wheel and not a yoke, but it's hard to really tell anything else. The photo we have of it, there's all the staff standing around it, so people working there. But
the internet seemed to think that was by design, that they're like, and I don't think that was it. I think that's just a group family shot, if you will. But,
yeah, I'll be curious to see what the final feature set looks like.
Yeah. Tesla stock is up this week. I don't know if it's as a result of this or not. It's up $20 to about we'll call it $295 as of just this Googling. That's up 7.42% in the last 5 days. So the stock market likes trucks. Maybe it's coincidence, but obviously it's a positive sign for Tesla.
And it'll be another interesting piece of the price war puzzle.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Tesla, they'll change the prices, on a weekly basis if they want to, and be interesting to see how the legacy automakers have to respond to that with their electric trucks. So.
Ford and Chevy have somewhat sketched out where they're going to play, but then when you look at with some variants, obviously. But when you look at like just the different price points for the Model Y, the Model S, Model X, you can start to get a sense of where this is going to fit. Like I don't think it's not going to be like a $200,000 truck. Like it's a maze-through vehicle they're going to make a lot of. So it'll be very aggressive. I think very interesting to see how aggressive they get. So speaking of money, should we spend some money?
Sure.
Let's do it. This is a good one. Andy writes, longtime listener of the podcast and regular viewer of your website. Thank you. Spend My Money is one of my favorite segments, and I'd like to see what you think of my situation. My daughter is in high school and drives an '08 Honda Civic EXL with the 1.8 liter and automatic. I bought her this a few years ago to drive to school, practices, and her part-time job. It only has around 80,000 total miles on it. It's been a great school car so far. Now my son will be getting his school permit soon, and we will be needing another car. My thoughts are as follows. Buy my son another cheap car based on some of his preferences. Buy a nicer car for my daughter, who will be going to college in about 2 years, and pass the Civic down to my son. Buy a new car for myself, okay? And hand my car down to my daughter and the Civic down to my son, so the trickle-down effect. Mm-hmm. His car is a 2019 Accord EXL 2-liter turbo with a 10-speed auto with only $58,000. He loves it, especially in sport mode. Nervous about releasing that to his less experienced drivers. Both learned to drive with this car primarily, though, so they do know what they're doing. He would put it in eco mode to dull the throttle when they are driving. Naturally, he suspects they will use sport mode as he would have at their age, and I would have as well. Initial thought, he says, is option 2, maybe a newer, smaller sedan like the Civic or a compact SUV. As you can tell, I'm partial to Hondas, but would consider a comparable Toyota, Mazda, or Hyundai. Solid reliability is a must. Speaking of Hyundai, my wife drives a 2020 Palisade Limited, which they like very much. So there you go, John, right in your wheelhouse.
Yep.
Here's the budget. For option 1, it's 10 grand and under 15 grand for option 2. New car for him would be about 50 grand for a sedan or a 2-row SUV. Would be open to a hybrid. He gets around 28 to 32 mpg with his Accord when driven conservatively. And obviously, fuel efficiency would be positive. This new hybrid Accord and CR-V are interesting, and the new Toyota Crown is intriguing in the lower trims for the fuel economy. As much as I would love to save the manuals, just doesn't fit our family needs right now. I get that. I'm going to drive the new Accord hybrid perhaps as soon as next week, so I'll update that on a future podcast. But all of that, where do you land on this menu of options we have here?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I won't unpack it all in detail. I will tell you, I would go with option 3.
3, okay.
Yeah, get yourself a new car, pass down the other cars. That's sort of how it worked for. Well, I got my sister's hand-me-down car. Was my first car. It was a Blazer, and that was great. And then, she went off to college, and I forget what she got after that. But yeah, just I think keeping the 2 cars you have in rotation and getting yourself something is a good way to go. Let's see. Honda, you like Hondas? Maybe the Pilot Trail Sport if you want to get yourself a little something
good
fun.
One, yeah.
That one sounds kind of intriguing to me. Like I said, the sort of lightly off-roadified crossovers are appealing to me. So it depends on what your specific tastes are, but that'd be one possibility. There's just so many things that you could buy in that $50,000 range. Maybe you could get yourself a nice little Acura.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you could have some fun with that. Yeah, so what I tend to think of is leaning towards either confirming his sort of impetus to go with option 2, because you can get a decent car in that price range.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's solid. Because again, you could get like a relatively new or lightly used vehicle again in that area. And I think, like a Civic or, a RAV4 lightly used, I think those things are going to be pretty reliable. I also do like the, not to sit on the fence, but I also like option 3, which is where, and here's why. You're getting a new car for yourself, and then to your point, John, you're keeping it all in the family. The Accord, the kids know the Accord.
Yeah.
And, I think you can, everything is known here, so you can pass that down. The Civic is still there. Maybe your son decides to do some mods for it. Wouldn't be the first time somebody in high school decided to mod out a Civic or something. And that's sort of there for you. And then you get the new car. I mean, you're the adult. Maybe you should get the new car, right?
Yeah.
And, and the other thing too is, say you're going to spend 50 grand on like a new car, whether it's, like a new Honda SUV or, sedan, or you want to maybe go off the board and see if you get something like sportier from like Mazda. You're getting a new car. And the other 2 options, it sounds like you have to consider used. Option 2, you could probably go new for the price point you're willing to spend, but you could also end up going used for that as well. So I think in some ways not easier, but I think the least amount of unknowns is to get yourself a new car and then trickle everything down. And I think that's kind of a logical play. That's probably what I would do. I also think it does depend a little bit on your own personal preference. Like, do you want a new car? If you like your Accord and you're like, I really want to keep driving this thing, it's 4 years old, maybe it is the smart play to go with option 2. I think it does trickle down a little bit to like, are you in the mood for a new car? Because if you're not, obviously that changes the other two, tips over the other two dominoes.
Yeah. I'm thinking, man, if you could find, it's been a minute since I looked at used prices of a Honda CRZ. And if you went with option 2, maybe you could get your daughter. I don't know what your daughter likes. She might just prefer to have the Accord. I was just thinking, following a little thread there, but there's if you go with option 3, you get to just explore exactly what you want and don't have to worry about making someone else happy, because what they get is what they get. And and sounds what they're getting is good.
Definitely. Yeah.
And I wouldn't be too worried about putting things into sport mode. It doesn't change the car all that much.
I kind of was thinking that too. Like it's been a minute since I've driven the Accord, but I don't recall sport mode turning it into like
something unsafe, or
like an NSX or something from the 90s. I could be wrong. Like I said, I think I'm going to drive one next week, so I'll put one into sport mode and see if it is different than I remember. But I tend to agree with you on that, John. But also, Andy knows his kids. If they're going to put it in sport mode, and then like mentally that changes how they act like that. It may not change the car all that much, but it may make somebody like like a street racer. Well, that's a different set of problems, if you will. Because we all did knuckleheaded things when we were that age with cars, and cars were not as fast back then. Let's put it that way in many instances. Yeah. $50,000, the world's your oyster. Honda CRZ is a very interesting take. Totally forgot about that. I drove that at MIS, Michigan International Speedway once. It's totally random. I'm looking at things here. Nissan Ariya, that's under 50. You mentioned the Pilot. You could load that up. You could get the new RX from Lexus if you want to go down that road. Dodge Hornet. Well, that's
Hyundai Santa Fe Hybrid if you're looking for fuel economy, but that might be a little bit too close if you've already got a Palisade in your stable. It might be you might want something a little different.
Yeah. No, so many different things. Ioniq 5, you want to go electric, you can do that for under 50. So let us know what you do.
Yeah. Let us know what option you pick, and then we can
maybe we can do some more follow up. Yeah. Well, good luck. Good luck to you, Andy. Thanks for writing in. It's all the time we have. You have any summer beer plans there, John? What do you drinking these days?
Oh man, I was at a friend's child's birthday party a couple weeks ago, and in the bottom of the cooler I found an Anderson Valley blood orange goza, which
blood oranges this summer. Oh, it's great.
And the Anderson Valley gozas are just such tremendous summer beers. They're super crisp and a little bit salty, and when you put the blood orange in it, you get that tanginess, and it's already a little sour. I'm going to be going around to some of the the smaller supermarkets around town, some of the local not chains, and looking for whatever Anderson Valley they have in stock, because I just forgot how excellent that beer is. It's so refreshing.
There is a Sheboygan Brewing Blood Orange Honey, which is pretty good.
That's their one. I don't really like a lot of their beers, but that one I can drink. Their brewery is kind of right near our cottage.
Okay.
So we go in there sometimes, and sometimes they have something on tap that's decent. But that's the one of theirs that it's pretty good, and actually you give it to people who come visit, and they all seem to like it too.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have this week. If you enjoy the show, that's 5 stars at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get the Autoblog podcast. Please send us more Spend My Monies. That's podcast@autoblog.com. Be safe out there. We'll see you next week.